We have Marc from Quortex, I think, about to take the stage. Marc, are you there?
I am there. I am there. Can you see me? Yeah,
excellent.
I just hope it's not too noisy in the background because I'm doing my best, with the,
no.
the IBC.
Trust me, you are not the only person who's struggling today. We've got people coming in from doctors' surgeries, people in airports, people from, it's going to be crazy and quite fun, and actually quite a good advert for streaming. So we're holding it together by the skin of our IP networks. Marc, over to you.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen if that's doable. Can I do that?
Yep, should be.
Yeah, hold on a sec. Okay. Oh, I will have that's always the same. I will have to leave and reopen to share my screen. I'm sorry about that.
Oh,
just give me 5 seconds. 5 seconds. Okay.
So he's going to get me to tap dance, right? I'll tap dance while you reconnect. God, excellent. Well, I feel like I should drag someone out of the mist, but no one's got their cameras on to be victimized. So, just to fill you in, if you haven't picked up already, on those of you that are making their way to IBC, the Sunday session, which we've teamed up with the SVTA, Women in Streaming Media, and CDN Alliance, we have 120 capacity. We have far more than 500 registered. You're not all going to get in. First come, first served. Do your best, and don't forget it's a paid bar because we're all .orgs and cheapskates. So you're there to sponsor us by buying your friends and peers some drinks and encouraging them to join. Marc, I can see your presentation taking shape. There you go. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for tap dancing in between. So I have 10 minutes, so I will be quick and efficient on that. So I wanted to make it a bit controversial, and that's on purpose. I will explain why. I mean, when we talk about the greening of streaming, and when we talk about energy consumption to some prospects, our customers, we sometimes get some not negative, but I would say so feedback. And the reason for that is, I would say, absolutely obvious. We will all be flying from around the world, or I hope that some of you to be trained, but we will all be flying from all around the world to go to IBC in the next few days, and still we talk about sustainability. And some customers or some prospects might say, well, how serious that is? I mean, what's the problem? I mean, what is it that you're trying to solve? So I'm going to have just 3 slides, with something that I hear from my prospects or customers, and how do I do, to convince them that there is something that needs to be done. The first thing that I hear is streaming footprint is negligible. And we all know that part of the problem is that there is, I would say, various information in that with factors that vary from 1 to 100 in terms of how much the impact of the streaming is. So what I use is a very simple slide, which don't get me wrong, and I know it's recorded, and it's a bit scary because I know all of the figures of this slide, are probably wrong. But still, I think it's good to have, a viewed from space approach, order of magnitude approach, where we try to estimate with figures that anyone can understand what is the streaming impact. So basically, we start from what's the consumption related to digital in the world. And I mean, you find plenty of studies that will say from 2 to 5% is related to digital. So we took a very conservative approach, and we say 2 to 5% of the worldwide energy consumption is related to digital. Digital includes screens, include networks, include data centers. So it's very wide, and it includes both the build phase and the run phase. That's very important. It's not only the run, because if you consider only the run, we all know it's very partial and very biased. Out of this 2.5%, you will find plenty of studies saying 30% of that is related to networks and data centers. Okay, so 30% of the 2.5%. And then we all know, because that's public, you can look at the Cisco VNI, for instance, that 70% roughly of the internet traffic is video today. So if you multiply these numbers with the worldwide energy production today, which is about 600 exajoules, and if you divide that by the estimated, again, rough estimation, number of hours of streaming that is watched every year, and you can find plenty of different figures again, but I took the 1,000 billion approach that you find here and there, you end up with something which is around which is around slightly less than 1 kilowatt hour for 1 hour of streaming. Full disclosure, that's probably absolutely wrong. And that's the whole point of this group, is to figure it out much more precisely than that, and with science. But the point is here, we just want people to realize that 1 kilowatt hour per hour is huge. It's like an electric heater, which would heat for 1 hour sitting next to you. That's absolutely huge. And if you look at, the carbon footprint and how it translates, you realize, and I think it's a very good way, to educate with that the answer is it depends, because as it was said earlier, the translation from energy to CO2 will depend on many factors. Where is it that the energy is consumed? That's for the run. That's fairly easy, because if I'm in France, I know my energy mix roughly. If I'm in Germany, I know my energy mix. So that's okay for the run. Unfortunately, for your device, so your laptop, for instance, we all know that its footprint is, for the vast majority, made in the run in the bid phase, which happens in China. And you may know that the energy mix of China is not the greenest on earth. So basically, it's very difficult. But here, just to make an exercise, we say, okay, let's use the European energy mix to translate this energy to CO2, and you end up with 130 grams of CO2 per 1 hour of streaming. And guess what? The good news is that with that very rough estimation, we end up, somewhere in the range of the studies that you can find on the internet. Okay, so the goal of this that I'm doing with my prospect and customer is just to say, no, I mean, yeah, maybe we're trying to solve something which is not as big as plane industry or the car industry, but still, I mean, it's huge. It's very significant. We cannot just say and do nothing. Second thing that I hear is, yeah, but anyway, the public cloud is carbon neutral. And you find plenty of articles explaining why is it that the cloud is carbon neutral. Two things on that. One, it's absolutely amazing that these big organizations have sustainability in mind. Okay, and that's I will never say that it's not a good thing that is happening. But on the other hand, the problem is that when you say that you are neutral, one, most of the time you consider only the run phase. So basically, the electricity that is required to run the servers. You just forget that you need to build these servers. And of course, it's the build phase, and you need to build the building as well, And of course, that's where most of the impact is done. And most of the time, when you talk about the compensation of the carbon, and I come to it, you compensate only the run phase and not the build phase. And it takes me to the second part. Most of them are said to be neutral because they compensate what they emit, which is very good. Again, I'm not saying it's not good. But the problem with compensation is that it may, it may leave the impression that basically you've done the job. You compensate, it's okay. I've received, I've received a text message from because I had to fly because I'm in London. I'm so ashamed of that. I received a text message, from my from the plane company after the flight saying, "Don't worry, we compensate your flights." The problem is not that they compensate. It's nice. The problem is the "don't worry" part. It's not because you compensate that you solve the problem. It's very good to compensate, but we know that it doesn't work at scale. That's one thing. And we also know that the compensation is something where you trade something that you emitted. When I flew in, I emitted some CO2 versus something that maybe at some point will be compensated by planting trees, for instance. If you plant trees, I mean, guess what? It will take 50 years before they can absorb the amounts that I emitted. So you trade something that you emitted against something that you may be able to compensate in the future. So it's not like, it's not like the perfect solution. So on the neutrality of carbon, I think there are plenty of things to say. And the worst thing to do would be to say they compensate, so I'm good, I've done my job. Last thing that I hear from some prospects and customers, they say, hey, we don't care because basically the energy is getting greener anyway. I mean, you can read in the press wind turbines everywhere and solar panels everywhere. Of course, I mean, if you are serious about it, we all know that it's only, you know, a very tiny portion of the energy which is produced today with this type of production. Again, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that if you look at the overall figure, the part of the fossil energy, so gas, coal, and oil, which is in gray here, is one, way bigger than anything else, and two, it's increasing at the same pace that what we call the renewable energy. And the reason for that is unfortunately quite simple, is that when you build a solar panel or when you build a wind turbine, you're not sure that there will be sun and you're not sure that there will be wind. And very unfortunately, you need to build the exact same capacity with other types of energy. And as of today, very unfortunately, these other types of energy is fossil energy. And that's what happened, you know, in Germany, in Spain. And again, I'm not saying it's bad. We need to go in that direction. I'm just saying that, you know, the energy is getting greener and we will have infinite energy is not the way to go, because, you know, we all know, I think, that the amount of energy which is available on the planet is limited, and we all know that this infinite growth doesn't exist. So just getting rid of the problem by saying we have some wind turbines and some solar panel is, I would say, the best way to fail in reducing the footprints. So I usually end up by saying, I mean, why would we care? Why? We must care. There is no other option. And the reason for that is very simple. We may not be changing the world, you know, with what we do here, but we have to do our part. And I mean, I usually like to use an image or a metaphor for that. I don't throw my empty beer can in my neighbor's garden. Okay, so just because, you know, you shouldn't do it. It's the same here. I mean, why would we not try to do something? Whereas, of course, there are plenty of ways where we can have an impact. So that's usually what I say to my dear prospect and customers. It's not that, you know, we're changing the world, is that is the only option is to do something. We cannot stay like doing nothing. And again, just to wrap that up, I think that's where this group is very good at is putting science there, much more science than what I've done in this slide deck, to give explanation on, you know, what is the impact, what is the footprint, and what are the options that we need to take to address that, basically.
Awesome. Absolutely brilliant, Marc. As always, you gave a great presentation earlier in the year at the end of one of our members' meetings, as we always have internal presentations from members. And once again, you smashed it out the park.